During this period, Britain became the most powerful and richest country in the world, with the largest empire that had ever existed, ruling a quarter of the world's population. Britain managed to build a huge empire that expanded its colonial presence in many parts of Africa, in India, in the Middle East, and in other parts of Asia. It was a long period of peace and prosperity, especially due to the increasing industrialization in textile and machinery, as well as to the worldwide network of trade across the globe. The Victorian period formally begins in 1837, the year Victoria became Queen, and ends in 1901, the year of her death. It was a time of tremendous change in the lives of British people. In 1837, most people lived in villages and worked on the land. By 1901, most lived in towns and worked in offices, shops, and factories. Towns and cities got pipe water, gas, and by the end of the century, electricity. Britain could claim to be the world's superpower despite social inequality at home. Victorian England was a man's world. More specifically, it was a rich upper-class man's world. Women of this class enjoyed a life full of all the things money could buy: travel, fine clothes, good food, and of course servants. Their goal in life was to marry, have children, and raise them in an appropriate and respectful manner. They used to have plenty of time to enjoy the finer things in life. Dancing and grand social parties were commonplace in their lives, and seaside holidays became popular. However, in doing so, the ladies had to remember to follow certain unspoken rules to keep their reputation safe. The increased scale of industry and overseas trade, together with the expansion of empire, fueled the proliferation of commerce and finance, such as banks, insurance companies, shipping, and railways. This new economic system needed new ways of administration and regulation, which provided new occupations for an emergent middle class, which was having more power. Millions of workers live in slums with no sanitation, no water supply, no paved streets, no schools, no law order, no decent food or new clothing. Their hours of work began at 5:30 a.m. and were never less than 10. The brutal degrading conditions were so awful that drunkenness and opium taking was usual. It was also a period of big inventions and changes and the beginning of important reforms that turned Great Britain into a modern country. Just as an example, at the beginning of the Victorian period, crossing the Atlantic took up to 8 weeks. By 1901, it took about a week. There were very important people in Great Britain that contributed significantly to all these changes: politicians, scientists, doctors, explorers, chemists, or physicists. And of course, writers of that time reflected the society they were living in. It was the novel that was most important in the Victorian period. Charles Dickens is probably the most famous Victorian novelist, who was extraordinarily popular in his days, with his characters taking on a life of their own beyond the page. Films are also a useful element for complementing our study of the history and culture of Victorian Britain and the British Empire. Victorian literature provided a great stock of familiar stories about colorful characters caught up in mystery, fantasy, adventure, and domestic conflict. Among the earliest films are adaptations of works by Victorian writers like Dickens, Carroll, Hardy, or Tennyson. And finally, if you want to know what was happening out of Great Britain at that time, you can have a look at these people.